Greetings everyone, my name is Sudarshan and I head the gaming vertical at Indium and I have over 14 years of experience in video game QA. To begin, thank you all for attending today's webinar. I wish to share our insights and experience while working on multiple video games. I have worked on console, PC and mobile-based video games in the past. So let's just get started with the webinar. Gaming over decades has been dynamic in its approach. There are multiple genres factoring people of varying age groups. In the following slides, I will be discussing the trends and experiences that we encounter on video games. Also emphasize on areas which make video games successful and what was the mantra behind the most popular video games currently in existence. The following webinar would last for a total of 30 minutes. All questions will be answered at the end of the webinar. You could go ahead and post your questions in the chat window that you see there. And once we have the list of questions, I'll be answering it at the end of the webinar. During the course of the session, we will discuss on effective gameplay, aesthetic appeal of a game, and its influence on video gamers worldwide. We'd also discuss our approach on making the game relatively bug-free, feedback provided to the developers, having a QA success story, and the thought process behind testing of video games. So to begin with, we have identified 6 key aspects that define the current trend of video games, and the 6 key aspects are the appeal of a video game, gameplay and user involvement, user retention and the trends behind it, ad hoc and destructive testing, QA focus groups, and lastly, the futuristic testing approaches. Let's start with appeal of a game. At appeal of a game, what happens when you launch the game for the first time? When I had used to be a gamer myself, I installed Watch Dogs on my PC. And when I installed it and post the first cutscene or the FMV, and when the game shifted to the gameplay mode, the screen went blank. I restarted the game twice and started a new game thinking this was a one-off error. And when I saw that it used to crash as soon as it moved from the cutscene, I realized that this was a constant error. And then I went ahead and reinstalled my GPU drivers and also well as my motherboard drivers. When I went ahead and restarted the game, I still found this error. And after looking at various forums and trying to fix this issue, I understood that this error has been there due to the hardware configuration. This game did not work on a particular set of ATI cards, the one that was running on my PC. And then beyond that, there were no current fixes on the game, and till now the game's been resting on my shelf and has been collecting dust ever since. So hence, the first impression while launching a game is a main factor whenever you launch the game, when you interact the first time, when you see the first logos, when you see the first menu popping up, and when you enter the game, it creates the impression that you need to have while moving to the rest of the game and while you're navigating it. So the first launch is always important, and people always get impressed with the first time they see the game. What we do over here is that we ensure that we go ahead and check the game across various peripherals, various hardware, and various devices and multiple configurations to ensure that this first user experience does remain constant across all platforms. Having an ease of navigation. So when I had played the game Max Payne 3, I felt like since it was a port from a PlayStation port or a Microsoft Xbox port, I felt since when I played the PC version, it felt the same. And though the controls were on a keyboard and mouse, when I used to go ahead and hover the mouse around, it felt like I was using the Y-axis joystick. And this used to have an effect on the gameplay. It went ahead and whenever I used to like navigate around the screen, this changed a lot of the user experience, especially with aiming enemies and with the targeting sense. It created a lot of difference in the experience. Clutter-free window. When we go ahead and we launch the game, I mean, this on PC, it's usually been stable, and also on consoles, it's usually been stable, but on mobile games, as soon as we launch a game, we go ahead and we see a lot of pop-ups, a lot of push messages being enabled, and we get to see a lot more ads or banners that keep getting popped up as soon as you launch the game the first time. And this provides a disruptive user experience wherein they go ahead and they expect to go see a clean window wherein they just launch the game and they get into the game, but the users have to like fight, like take banners and take up pop-out windows just to launch the game for the first time. And I've seen this, a lot of users feel that they are being bothered at the very first launch, and this usually becomes a confusing way to go ahead and navigate into the game. Primary objective focus. So primary objective focus is usually it comes into play whenever the user launches the game, they get into the game, and they go ahead and they get into the first gameplay mode. So usually with a lot of games, the tutorial jumps in and the tutorial makes the user have to read a lot of text. They make the user perform a lot of basic tasks, and they have a lot of focus on user uh, uh, the user details instead of launching the gameplay. And as a gamer, I think like the first primary thing that I want to do when I launch a video game is go ahead and focus on getting into the gameplay primarily. And my objective is to move around the game, like go ahead and increase the thing, maximum exploration that I can do initially and focus on switching between various tasks. So the primary objective focus is very important when it comes to a user perspective. So the user should feel in control of the game and they would have to go ahead and work on this thing, discover a few things themselves without being fed too much, which moves to the next point, forgetting the basics. So when it comes to basics of a video game, the main objective is the gameplay over here. Now, the user has to be led to focus on the main gameplay, on the main storyline on most of the video games, and also have a the thing, clear picture on what they need to do in order to achieve their targets in the game. But then most games today, since there are multiple gameplay factors that are involved, the main objective has been diluted. And when they get to play the game, they go ahead and they experience uh, a lot of things at the start of the game itself, which makes them stray away from the actual gameplay and explore other options, which would not make the game interesting. They forget that their main focus would be on the primary game targets. And this is something that we internally we focus on trying to ensure when a game is launched, we have the basics sorted out. Being the Next point, tutorial engagement. Usually what happens is that tutorials are heavily text-based. They have a lot of engagements like the users, they talk to probably NPCs, or they have a pop-up or a tutorial that comes on screen and the user does not have too much of control. And usually I've seen most users, their main intention is to go ahead and move forward and try to skip all the screens without reading the text. Their main focus would be to get into the gameplay mode. And when the tutorial engagement is long, they have issues with the focus and they do not read a lot of text, and some important areas of the game which are covered at the tutorial is being missed over here. So I played this game recently, which is Witcher 3 Wild Hunt, and while playing the game, the tutorial was interactive. So all the base moves and the combat moves and everything were taught with examples, and the user actually had to perform them step by step, which made it a much easier way for the user to remember what to do. So this is a good place to go ahead and engage when it comes to a tutorial. Push messages. This has been particular with in terms of mobile based games. So when I launched a game which was basically a tower defense game, uh, I got a push message as soon as I launched the game. And this game basically was quite annoying because even though I ran out of the moves at the first user experience, I still got push messages inviting me to come play the game. And once I launched the game again, I did not have any options in order to continue playing the game. So push messages on mobile-based games is quite confusing, and we would like to go ahead and restrict it to probably the second or third day of after installing the game. So what we do while testing the game is go ahead and look at all these factors. This is just primarily during the first phase of the launch, wherein the focus on ensuring that the first time a user gets to look at the game, we go ahead and we ensure that the first impression has the best impression. Moving on to gameplay effect and user involvement. So gameplay basics. This has always been the primary focus that we do when we start the gameplay. Like we ensure that the primary mode of the game, the primary objective of the game, the primary look and feel of the game remains stable and does uh, not evade from what the actual storyline is. So in gaming, there are multiple genres, and I mean, there's no direct mantra to have a successful gameplay. There are numerous genres and types of games that have multiple genres, subgenres within them to enhance the gameplay ability. And there is no sure shot where each game has been successful. It's been down to the gameplay aspects, and sometimes it's just down to pure luck. So the most common practice has been on the level up system, with most video games having level up system, irrespective of the type of games that have been there. Previously, it used to just be within RPG, but now almost each and every game in the market does have a level up system. So at Indium, we focus on how engaging the game is and interesting it is to a fresh set of eyes. That's how the user knowledge comes into play. The user knowledge is basically how well the user is equipped with the game, how interesting the gameplay is, and how focus oriented the gameplay is, and also how much of the game that he knows is involved. And then moving on to the next point, difficulty levels. Difficulty levels is actually two-edged sword. Mostly people always thought the difficulty level should increase as the game goes by. But then this has been an old age trend, probably in the arcade days where it did make sense. But these days, difficulty levels are dynamic and they go ahead and they change the way the game is being gripped. I would say we should have multiple difficulty levels in order to ensure that the game remains interesting and the user feels involved in multiple phases of the game. Moving on to storyline. Storyline, the game has always been a lot of games. Their main appeal has been on the storyline and also with the aesthetic appeal. Like when the user goes ahead and sees the story of the game, makes it interesting. If there is a story behind it, and if there are uh, things that would keep the user engaged, then yes, the storyline would create a huge difference with the gameplay involvements. And this also brings out the aesthetic appeal. When based on the storyline, if it's a cartoonish storyline, if the graphics are serious or if the graphics are real-time renders, then it would not give a complete appeal. Like aesthetics needs to match the storyline, wherein the gamers tend to get into the zone. We could have something like Warcraft-based storyline with uh, the same graphics from Witcher. It would not make sense. The storyline should always be aesthetically it should aesthetically set the tone for the rest of the gameplay. Ability to set the pace. There are times where people have seen the games being too intense and not being able to get away from it. It creates a negative impact wherein they focus on the gameplay elements. There's no timeout over here, and people just focus on what needs to be done, and this brings about a continuous mode of focus. This basically uh, stresses the gamers out way longer than the actual this thing, the game timings. So ability to set the pace is very important as it goes ahead and gives the gamer the perspective to take breaks between the game and actually charge themselves up for the next missions at hand. Making the user feel at control. A lot of these games, especially with the current set of match 3 games in particular, the user feels like all the choices are randomized and whatever they do, it's just by chance that they go ahead and they clear the level. They call it down to pure luck, but they do not understand there is a strategy involved and there is some kind of area where the users can actually control the outcome of the level. So making the user feel in control would make a lot more sense than having just the thing, just having a randomized chance in gameplay. And moving on to controls mapping. In controls, the basic in PC at least, it's been WSD or the arrow keys and the keyboard mouse combo. Or with respect to the consoles, it's always been like the joysticks. And in terms of mobiles, since most of the mobiles are touchscreen, so the controls have always been hitting the point where the action needs to be done. So this all users are in turn they're completely used to it, and this should not be a problem. Usually what tutorials do is go ahead and they explain base controls which users are already aware of. Avoiding such things and focusing more on the gameplay elements would go ahead and help a lot of users focus on the main areas. Moving on to the next slide, user retention. Now, a lot of gamers, they go ahead and they uh, start the game, and after the first impression, they do not come back. And some of the following are the ways that we could go ahead and improve user retention. Cutscene, cinematics, or FMV. These things have a huge involvement in the user control that gives the user a break to go ahead and charge themselves and move on to the next level, and also gives the game a storyline. And having cutscenes, cinematics, it goes ahead and improves the user involvement in while testing or while playing the game. Uh, Game reminders not becoming spam. This especially on mobile devices. We go ahead and we see a lot of people getting a lot of push messages or a lot of reminders, or going ahead and seeing their emails being flooded by video game invites. So these need to be minimized to ensure that the user does not feel that they're being harassed by the game. Not sharing every action on Facebook. So what happens is every time the user completes a level or tries to go ahead and even tries to clear the level, or whether it's successful or not, the game keeps asking them to post it on Facebook. This should not be done, as it just goes ahead and spams their walls, and it has a negative impact on the social life. Achievements and rewards. This is something that we particularly focus on while testing a game. Having an achievement and rewarding the player on their progression keeps them in check, and a lot of people focus on achievements and rewards in order to enhance their gameplay, and also it's a skill that they wish to show off. Immersive music. My favorite track even now is Tetris and Zelda. I mean, these games have been here for close to 4 decades now, and I still remember the tune and the experience that I had in the music when I used to play the game. So having an immersive music is vital, as it goes ahead and increases the attention that they have on the game. Patches, updates, DLCs. So patches as and when are created when there is a bug in the system, and this is to go ahead and clear the bug. This reducing the number of patches would also have a lesser toll on their usability. So having a thorough testing done in order to reduce the patches would have a lot of effect on the gameplay. But updates and DLC, as you see, there are a lot of users who complete the game on a much faster scale, and having regular game updates to increase the number of levels, or having downloadable content, which is probably a mini game within itself, would create a lot of buzz, and would have the users staying back and wanting to play the game. PvP interaction. PvP interaction is vital, as users like to challenge one another, and they would want to challenge their friends more than just go ahead and challenge AI. PvP interaction has been the most popular when you look at MOBA-based games or MMOs. You see the main thing that people like to do is go ahead and challenge others. And PvP interaction, I think, is vital to go ahead and look at this thing, the way the games are being played. And game community and walkthroughs. Creating a buzz on social media is vital as it goes ahead and creates a community-based gamer support. And this in turn incorporates to having more gamers, getting more information and participating in the game. And not this not just by playing it. Ad hoc and destructive testing. So at ad hoc and destructive testing, we go ahead and we try to do multiple tests. And we basically try to break the game and we go ahead and we try to extend what we are doing. So at ad hoc and destructive testing, we make sure that the dependency does not fall only on checklists. And we use that only as a way to ensure that the game has been tested. Ability to think outside the box, able to pull the plug, detecting crash patterns, doing the unthinkable, interrupts game data corruption, and asking your 4-year-old inner self to play the game, blowing everything that you see, including your character. So these are different ways that we go ahead and we test the game. We ensure that like we are able to do enough destructive testing as each gamer does not play the game the same way. People have unique approaches to playing the game. And what we do in ad hoc and destructive testing is ensure that all edge cases are being tested and the users focus on what's important and they ensure that none of these scenarios do break the game. Focus groups. Focus groups are vital to play the game. As I said in the previous slide, not no two gamers play the game the same way. So at focus groups, what we go ahead and concentrate on is to ensure that each game is being played out in different way. We see the way the games are being progressed by different people, the approach they do while playing the game, their understanding of the game, and they have like their interest levels while playing the game. So again, when it comes to various genres, people have varied interest levels. And these can be listed as the pros and cons and also a data collection on how the games are being played. And groups are general base opinion, wherein we have a set of X number of males and X number of females playing the game their own way and providing us feedback on what they feel the game needs to be. Hence, a focus groups is something that we recommend when it comes to launching each any game. Futuristic testing approaches. So at futuristic testing approaches, these are the following things that we do have in place and we are going ahead and trying to enhance the gameplay ability while reducing human error. So automating smoke tests, as and when we get new builds, we would have to perform smoke tests and every time we get a build, and sometimes we do get close to about 5 to 6 builds a week. So each smoke test would go ahead and take about 30 minutes of the tester's time. So by automating smoke tests, we ensure that the tester's time has been reduced and they get to focus on other areas of the game. And then we are creating an in-house tool to check performance matrix. Currently, this performance matrix are focused on the PC and console platform. And we are also working on getting it on the mobile-based platform. So what these performance metrics do is they go ahead and check your frame rates, the battery consumption on mobile-based devices, the CPU, RAM, and GPU usage levels on all the thing. And we also check for network traffic. So what this metrics does is it's a unique dashboard that collects all information and we go ahead and we ensure that the tester focuses purely on the gameplay while this tool captures all this data. So this is a proprietary tool and that we are building in-house, and this ensures that the game is not uh, the game is currently checked without having too much of user involvement. And when it comes to security, I think most of you would remember the security hack on Sony, wherein we went ahead and a million accounts were compromised, due to which a lot of personal credit card information and personal information were leaked. So what we do at Indium is that we have a security team that goes ahead and does check for various kind of threats that could fall in various interactions of the game. So the security threats that we cover over here are invalid authentications, form tampering, privilege escalation, SQL injection, and XSS attacks. So what these things do is when you connect your game, and in case your game does have a social media function, so whenever the game is interacting through the social media, we ensure that there are no areas are affected, like when it's connecting to the social media, when it's posting on your wall, or is it being tweeted, and also when it comes to any credit card payments. So most of the mobile games these days are freemium based models, and they do have in-app purchases. So what happens when a user gives in his credit card details, and the game has to switch to the banking portal in order to make the payment, and also switch back into the game once the transaction has been successful. So what we do here is we use the following security threat checks to ensure that the game does remain stable and we do not have any imminent security threats while working on such features. So that's all I have on the slides, and I'm just looking at the charts. Do people have any question and answers? We would be uh, ready to answer any questions that you may have. Okay, I got one question over email. So this question basically asks, what is the tool about, the performance tool? The performance tool is basically a standalone tool that would be running on a web platform if for the PC-based games, and it will be running as an app on the mobile platform. So this tool goes ahead and checks the frame rates. It ensures that as and when the game is being uh, played, the tool would be running in the background. It would go ahead and check the number of cores that are being used in your processor, the amount of RAM that's being taken up, the amount of bandwidth usage that happens, the battery level for mobiles, and it also records your frame rate and various other components. This tool would be targeting, and it'll be recording the sessions. I'll be taking screenshots while the user is playing the game. So this tool basically allows the user to just focus on the gameplay elements while we go ahead and capture various analytical data in the background. Okay. The other question that I have is actually game testing without losing quality. So what happens is when we go ahead and try to ramp up the game, try to ensure that we meet deadlines, there are certain aspects of game testing that are being compromised. So my answer to this is that we would rather go ahead and focus on certain areas or certain aspects of the game to ensure that the stability remains completely and it's stable enough for launch. And when the game gets closer to the launch, that's when we go ahead and we do full QA sweeps on probably the last two builds to ensure that we haven't missed out on anything and all the aspects of the game have been checked. So in probably in beta stages or alpha or something close to the end of beta, we would go ahead and have selective areas of testing. That way, we ensure that we check the base functionality and the base gameplay of the game, and once it comes to a master or a release candidate, we ensure that the game has been checked thoroughly under all other aspects. So at this moment, that's all I have in the Q&A session. If you want something, you could go ahead and drop me an email. My email's right there. It's sudarshan@indiumsoft.com. And if you have any other queries, you could always reach out to Glenn Greenblatt at indiumsoft.com. So thank you all for participating. It's been lovely talking to you all.